This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, our weekend show is all about the two of us each nominating what we think is the biggest business story of the week, the most remarkable business story, a sleeper story, and our favourite business-related story. And it's a competition. We need a winner. So every week we're joined by a judge to choose that winner according to a set of ever-changing criteria, and that judge is our Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang. Adam, good morning.
Good morning, Michael. Good morning, Sean.
What are the criteria this week, Adam?
This week, topicality, timeliness, economic impact, of course, pure subjective bias, and a bit of melodrama, if you please.
But they're not evenly weighted, are they?
Well, they're supposed to be. In my head, they're evenly weighted.
Yes.
Do you know what's always...
And therein lies the problem.
Do you know what's always evenly weighted is the actual scores Adam gives. So he can trash something that I've done and love something that Michael's done, and Michael gets 23 out of 25 and I get 22 out of 25. I'd actually like Adam to grow a little bit of courage, be prepared to say that is a crap. That's like less than par. Less than par would be less than 12.5 out of 25, Adam. I want to see some grunt from you.
Oh, okay. Gee, all right. Go savage.
Drop the Mr. Nice Guy stuff. Get on to it.
Right. Full contact judging. Great.
Enough of this dribble. Let's get on with it. Biggest story of the week. Sean, take it away.
In the absence of any major economic story, which I wouldn't do anyway because I've sworn off economic stories for the year, there was only one big story this week. One big story. And I know because every day I sit down and write scripts. So I know when there's only one big story. Rio Tinto's bid for lithium group Arcadium Lithium. Why is it a big story? Number one, Mr. Lang. Major takeover on the ASX. Haven't had one all year. Rio bid $9.9 billion for Arcadium. The board of Arcadium said, okay. Now it goes to shareholders. It seems likely to get their approval. Little disappointed that we didn't have a little more toing and froing, a little more fighting, all that sort of stuff. Would have been much better for we journalists to talk about. However, it does seem like he's going to go ahead. We just haven't had one like this. I mean, AirTrunk's $20 billion plus deal was big, but AirTrunk wasn't listed. And BHP bid for Anglo American. It failed. We had Altium was sold to a Japanese group for $9.1 billion. But even that was just like in private enterprise buying a local company. So it's the only real takeover stoush of any size we've had all year. Really important. Second, big deal for Rio Tinto, which still makes the vast majority of its money from iron ore mines. And some of them are aging. This is a big tilt into lithium, particularly in Argentina, where Rio already has a mine. It helps the company diversify its business, which is very important for Rio. Arcadium Lithium is expected to produce about 5% of the world's lithium next year. Hence, Rio becomes a major lithium producer. It's big for lithium as well. That silvery white metal. Extra point for you, Adam. Do you know lithium's symbol on the periodic table?
Oh, God.
It's about as obvious as it could be.
It's not LI, is it?
Ah, look at that. Genius.
Thank God for that.
So the price of lithium went from $20,000 a tonne to about $600,000 a tonne less than 2 years ago. Now it's back down to $75,000 a tonne. There's been less demand, more supply. Experts reckon that'll right itself in the next couple of years. This deal shows that faith has not been lost in lithium, and that is good for Australia. It's also big for other lithium stocks like Resources, Sayona Mining, Liontown Resources, IGO, all those companies. Big deal. Finally, a serious, successful takeover on the ASX. Biggest of the year, biggest story of the week. Michael.
When you busted out we haven't had any other takeovers this year, I'm like, oh, is that right? Is that right? I felt like the moderators in the the Trump
fact
Harris
checkers,
about like furiously fact checking as you were going, just googling, and unfortunately time beat me and I wasn't able to correct you. So I'm going to assume that you are 100% correct.
Dog whistle politics, Michael. Just mentioning it puts the doubt in the judge's mind. I get 2 extra points because Adam got LI right from the periodic table.
What the heck? That doesn't work.
Works for me.
No, I object. The biggest story this week is there's really only one contender, this week, and that is...
There is. You're right. Totally. I did it.
That is, Sean, the stark reality that is facing so many businesses in Australia. Company insolvencies, we heard this week, have hit a record high.
Oh,
with more
my
than
God.
6,000.
Can you get any more boring?
Sean, it's not boring for those companies that are affected by this.
Stay on track, Michael.
But
Focus.
I am.
Don't let me put you off.
And you know what? I can get through this in 1 minute if you just zip your lip.
The time starts now.
You are the only reason that I have been delayed. This is on you. Company insolvencies, record high, 6,600 firms failing in just 6 months. Let's take a look at the sectors that are struggling most. And you actually see just how broad this is. Construction, accommodation and food services, retail, trade, professional, scientific and technical services, manufacturing. It is everywhere. It is right across the board. This is major. What is causing it? We all know the answer to this. High inflation, high interest rates are top of the list. It's an environment where people aren't spending money. Everything is costing more. Businesses don't have enough cash flow.
Help the listener.
Aren't using
Help
the cash.
the listener. Come on, interrupt him. Help the listener. I stayed quiet for a minute, and I tell you what, I was asleep.
All right. You've asked me to be a full contact judge, and I'm going rogue. Sean wins. Michael, I'm cutting you off.
Before we've even finished. That is the best decision you have ever made.
I'm very uncomfortable with this new disposition, but I'm going to try and embrace it, at least for this show.
I love Michael's face right now. If only we must put the video. He is just
happy.
Crestfallen.
Yeah, Sean, green energy, opportunistic timing, massive global play, big numbers, really bold. I love what Rio Tinto has done here. And it does, for me, quite by daylight, take away the company insolvency story. So sorry, Michael. It was a merciful thing.
It's a mercy killing. On behalf of the listeners, thank you, Adam. Thank you. Come on, Michael, say something. Oh, he is very cranky, isn't he?
I'm not going to say anything. No, I'm just...
Rise above,
I'm going
get
to...
back on top.
No. I'm just going to allow the listeners to realise how boring this show is without me. Just let the two of you just crap on for a little bit, and then we'll see how important...
That is an excellent recovery.
Picture a tricycle, right? There is one big wheel and two little wheels. You are the two little wheels. I am the big wheel on this tricycle. Without me, you are a lame bike.
Oh, my God.
Without any one of us,
excellent.
Michael, we're lame. And I want you to know that you will get 22 to 23 out of 25 for that story that you just cut off on.
Oh, no. I'm taking a different approach this time.
Oh.
Could be 21 or lower.
There'll be payback.
I wholheartedly object. I completely
Noted.
disagree with this. The fact is that I had a lot of I had the Cosboa report, I had the Banjo Loans research to go into it. I had all these other bits and pieces that were going to illustrate just how tough it is for small businesses, because really this was a small business story. But you know what?
I think
the big end of town has spoken. Adam, you've made your decision. You just don't care.
most remarkable story.
Yeah.
Michael, go for it.
What I find remarkable, number one is Adam's judging, and number two is this story. The fact that consumer sentiment is improving.
Oh. Hold the front page. Consumer sentiment, remarkable. Improving.
By improving, do you
I'm
mean
done.
less bad, Michael?
It's a big spike this week, but I think I've said enough.
That's it.
Over to you, Sean.
All over. Excellent. I like it when he gets cranky.
Because nothing actually riles me up quite like a good consumer sentiment report, right? And it's remarkable. It is particularly remarkable that consumers are feeling good because everyone thinks interest rates are going to come back down soon. The RBA has said nothing like that. There is nothing in what the RBA has said that actually suggests that is the case. But this week, the Westpac Melbourne Institute Consumer Sentiment Index showed a solid 6% lift in confidence in the economy. That is the best reading in ages. Maybe, and these are the things that maybe consumers are getting excited about. Inflation dropping, yes, okay, even though underlying inflation, the one that really matters, is still not within the RBA's target band. Maybe they are buoyed. Maybe they are positively just bubbling about how resilient the labour market is. That's a possibility. If you want a job, you can get one. Maybe consumers are just following the herd. They are seeing the US dropping rates. They are seeing New Zealand dropping rates this week. New Zealand slashed rates by 50 basis points. They assume that because everyone else is, we are next. The Reserve Bank hasn't said that. The Reserve Bank has said, no, we'll run our own race here. Business confidence is up too, according to the NAB business survey, business conditions as well. I think it is truly remarkable, right, that there is this growing optimism with both consumers and business, despite the ongoing pessimism of the Reserve Bank, that rates could still actually go either way.
I think that this story makes insolvency sound okay.
Well, have you considered, Sean, that maybe consumers are just happier because it's spring? Because it's warm. Ooh. Everyone gets a little bit happier when the days are longer, when it's a little bit warmer, when summer is around the corner, when you can start drinking more because
Fluids.
It's warmer. I don't know. What?
Fluids in general.
Yeah. Generally more fluids. Has anyone considered that the spike in consumer sentiment is actually just because miserable consumers, for once, for the first time in probably 6 long months, have seen the sun? There is a seasonal element to this, and no one is considering it, which is not actually the remarkable part of the story. The rest of it is remarkable. The fact that consumers are so positive and businesses are so positive now when the RBA has given them absolutely nothing to be positive about. I find that quite remarkable. Sean?
I don't know what to say after that. You're cranky, Michael. You're just that sort of, I'm not taking prisoners. I'm going for it. You've just tried to make a very, very ordinary story remarkable. Adam, what I have is a remarkable story. And it's actually almost disturbing. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just putting my own value judgment on this story, so I can't get sort of through it. It is remarkable how easy it is to invest in war now. There are always movies about the dodgy characters running guns. Nowadays, you don't need to hide. Some of the world's biggest ETF providers have started offering defence ETFs, as in defence exchange traded funds. There's 3 of them on the ASX now. Basically, they're capitalising on heightened international tensions and booming military spending. So there's Global X, Beta Shares and VanEck. VanEck listed a version last month, Global X Beta Shares this week. Global defence spending, it's about 2.4 trillion US. It's going to reach by 2030 3.1 trillion US. That's according to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. So why not invest in it? It kind of has these uncomfortable undertones for me, though I kind of get that other people don't worry about that. So what it is, you buy this ETF. It provides exposure to up to 60 companies in BetaShares case. Those companies derive at least half their revenues from the development and manufacture of military and defence equipment. So BAE Systems, General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, etc. An ETF is definitely a way of spreading your risk. I just think it's quite remarkable how quickly these products were developed, I suppose, given what's going on in the Middle East and Ukraine, and just how easy it is to invest in war. No value judgment. I'm trying to do this story without a value judgment on it. But yeah, I just think it's quite remarkable.
I think it's really uncomfortable.
Investing in war.
Value judgment. Oh God! But you can see why there's been a rise in ethical investing, can't you?
Yeah,
as soon as you have kind of these kinds of things coming up, and all of a sudden you are forced to make some very kind of clear decisions about where you want your money to go and what you want your money to do, and you can see why there has been a rise in ethical investing because of that. Anyway, I'm happy to make a value judgment here.
So I actually think gaming's a tricky one for me because personally, I don't mind gaming, but then the person next to me, Michael, I don't know about you, whether it's you or not, but people hate gaming. And so they say, what's the difference? But defense, I just think, is the next, actually building machines to kill people. Oof, I find that a bit difficult.
And it is why then ethical funds are so are such complicated things, aren't they? Because it is an entire fund built around a very, very subjective kind of decision. And I was speaking with one investor who said they're a little bit wary of ethical funds because of that, because there are so many decisions that are required to be made, and they are made by someone whose exact judgments might not align with your own.
Totally.
And because of that, things can be excluded, and that it may be a better approach just to invest in something that makes a lot of money and then put that money towards the causes that you feel passionately about. It's a fascinating kind of topic.
Or you could be a shareholder and you decide to actually engage with an organisation which is changing, like Origin Energy, therefore that you think that's ethical. Or like BHP this week, Norges Bank, which is a Norwegian sovereign fund, they actually decided to put BHP back in to their OK list. They were on the outer because of BHP's got out of coal mining. It's a fascinating area. Anyway, Adam, over to you.
It is fascinating. Remarkable even. So, somewhat controversially, Michael wins. On this one, the consumer sentiment rose 6 points, but it's still well below the neutral of 100. It's not even at 90 points. And so we have, as Sean, I think, as you've said a number of times, we're still gloomy. Business is gloomy too. It's at -2. Business confidence.
Consumers are miserable bastards. I think that's my phrase.
Oh, okay, got it. And the RBA still has a watching brief as to whether or not interest rates can come down. Now, obviously, that is because inflation is so sticky. So for me, that all those things are remarkable. The great disconnect between how we're feeling and how the RBA has to do its job. Well done, Michael.
Thank you, Adam. Good decision. Shall we take a quick break? And we will come back on the other side and find a sleeper story of the week. Sean, we're looking for a sleeper story. A sleeper story is, of course, one that's flying under the radar a little bit and one that's not getting the attention that we feel it deserves. Oh, I'm not optimistic about mine. You go first.
Way to sell it in.
Oh, you know what? I've lost my confidence.
Hold on, you won that. You won the last category.
Yeah, I know, but it feels like that was a bit of a pity point.
Because even you think you shouldn't have won it.
No, I agree that I should have won. I feel as though there might be what we call judge's remorse.
My sleeper story.
What's your sleeper story?
Absolutely none of us have been paying attention to this whatsoever. Residential real estate in Australia. Yep. While we weren't watching, the value of residential real estate in Australia pushed beyond 11 trillion, T-R-I-L-L-I-O-N, trillion dollars for the first time, up almost $1 trillion over the last year. It would have been more, but for slow growth in home values over the September quarter. But basically, the annual pace is about 6.7%. 12 months earlier, the annual pace was was almost 10%. In fact, we've got Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth values at record highs. The market's cooling, no doubt about it. Days on market has increased to 32 days in the September quarter, up from 29 days in the June quarter. There's more vendor discounting going on. The number of listings are above historical averages, but $11 trillion. Now, the superannuation sector is heading towards $4 trillion. So the homes across the country, almost 3 times that. We never talk about housing, ever, anywhere. Today we are. The sleeper story. $11 trillion. By far the most valuable asset across the land. What a cracking sleeper story. $11 trillion.
Even you don't believe in that, do you?
No, absolutely not. But the great thing about this is that I have at least a 50% chance of winning because it's got a big number.
Possibly greater then. Yeah. Look, this week, another sleeper story. This is the
one that you're confident about.
Look, I wouldn't have thought this was a sleeper story until I heard what Sean did. And by comparison, mine is yeah, I am fine. I am 100% okay now. This week, we received an extraordinary insight into an absolute crisis for Australian investors.
Crisis.
The IPO market. The IPO market is in the doldrums. And this week we learnt just how truly, shockingly bad it is. New listings have fallen to their weakest pace in 15 years. That's 1.5 decades. 15 years, long time. The analysis.
You really don't have much confidence in this story when you start saying stuff like that. But go on, this is fun.
No, but remember, there are families listening to this, and there are young kids, and they might be going, "Oh, Mum, how long is 15 years?" And luckily, I was here to point out that it's 1.5 decades. So I'm doing it for the kids, Sean.
Because that'll make much more sense to kids.
Well, it might. Just back to your spreadsheet. The analysis that we had this week that's been a bit of a sleeper story hasn't really been getting much attention. Revealed this week there were just 15 floats in the first 9 months of this year. The last time things were this bad, right? We were in the middle of the GFC. Susan Boyle was going viral with her audition on Britain's Got Talent. So you picture when you were watching her sing I Dreamed a Dream, and that was when this was bad.
This is one of your old tricks, Michael. When you don't really think there's much to a story, you just find out how many years it's been, and then you tell us all about what was going on. It's like a history lesson.
On this day.
And without demeaning your story, I kind of like it when you do it because often it's much more interesting than the story. Susan Boyle, I Dream a Dream.
And I guarantee as soon as we finish this, you're going to go and watch that now on YouTube just because it's one of those special moments, right? Oh, glorious. Yeah. No, don't go any further because we'll have to pay for the copyright. But Adam is kind of like Simon Cowell as a judge.
Simon is a bit like that. I mean, he kind of picked, like, wasn't it Simon Cowell? He picked the One Direction boys, the 5 of them, put them together, even though they didn't win Britain's Got Talent or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
I reckon Adam could do that for podcasting. I reckon Adam could pick the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 podcasts. I mean, that'd be boring because it'd be all tax reform.
Australia's got podcasts.
Well, like Australia's got tax reform or something like that, more likely.
Great idea.
Michael, sorry, I forgot you're here. Go on.
That's fine. I was just talking about like the GFC, one of the biggest kind of financial events in history. That's fine if you just want to kind of spear off in your own direction. But that was a long time ago, right? That was a long, long time ago. That was 15 years, 1.5 decades. As we discussed, we are not in another GFC. So what is causing this problem now? It is fascinating, isn't it? I mean, in just 9 months, this year, 9 whole months, which is, 3/4 of a full year.
What are we talking about again? I've totally
are talking about IPOs. Just $720 million has been raised. Just $720 million. That's 72% of $1 billion. With Guzman, that's right, isn't it? Yes, it is. With Guzman y Gomez, the highest profile IPO during that time, raising just $335 million. One of the big issues, as Sean pointed out to us this week, in a very kind of sleepery kind of way, is the flood of private money buying up assets. Think the big super funds like Australian Super and Australian Retirement Trust, which are just growing and growing and growing and growing, and they've got billions of dollars that they need to invest. They need to put it somewhere. So companies are being bought before they even can make it to the ASX. It is a sleeper story because for so long there's been talk of a problem, kind of whispers in corridors going, there's not much happening in IPOs, that kind of thing. But now we know how bad it is. And with these big funds continuing to grow and other big international investors circling, things aren't going to get any better. Where are retail investors supposed to put their money? What's this mean for the future of the ASX? These are all great questions that I'm asking.
Existential threats.
They certainly are. So I'd say the data this week has blown this story wide open. It has lit the fuse, which has certainly gone around the wrong way there. The fuse has been lit and then but I'm going to stick with it. The fuse has been lit. Adam.
So the fuse has been lit on residential real estate for me this week. The reason being an amalgam of factors, if you like. it is so rare that I can talk about the opportunity for reform in one of your stories, but there might be tax reform of a very significant nature. Sean, you talked about the MA election is probably on the cards for next year, and property, capital gains tax and negative gearing are both on the agenda, with a possibility that something might be proposed this time. And so for me, the value of residential real estate, people struggling to get into the market and its political appetite, all make this a very rich sleeper story this week.
It certainly is, because none of us have ever thought about any of that stuff before, and now we have this week.
This is extraordinary.
The fuse has been lit.
The fuse has been lit on Adam's credibility being shot as a judge this week. This week. This is an extraordinary decision.
What you don't realise, Adam, is that after the show, at some point when Michael and I will talk to each other, sort of on Monday morning when we catch up again without you, we'll go, can you believe what he did on Saturday? Like, I don't know how I won that. Like, we, behind your back, laugh at your judgment.
Openly point and laugh at my judgments. That is welcome feedback. The crisis for Australian investors, it's been going on and on and on, Michael. So, yes, it's 15 years, but it has been happening for some time.
Unlike property growth.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So houses grew for the first time this week, but IPOs have been dropping for some time.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, inconsistent.
Favorite story?
Let's move on to the favorite story. You go first.
Righto. So this story is about, Adam, wait for it, creative tax policy.
I'm just going to I'll see myself out.
And it comes from Portugal. Background to this. We found out this week that Elon Musk, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index, is now worth $256 billion US. Now, just as an aside, 8 of the 10 richest people are tech barons. The combined 8 this year so far have made $265 billion US, which brings me straight, sort of in a funny way, to Portugal. Portugal's annual GDP is around the same level as Elon's wealth, about the same level as those 8 tech barons have made this year, right? This is a country that is struggling. The Portuguese government wants to do something about it. It wants to turn Portugal into a low tax haven for young people by offering basically 10 years of tax breaks to people starting their careers in an effort to halt the growing brain drain. So their whole idea is you finish high school or you finish university in Portugal, rather than getting a higher paid job in the UK or Germany or somewhere like that, you end up staying in Portugal, and in that first year of work, you do not pay tax. And then over 10 years, you slowly pay more and more tax till after 10 years, you are paying the same amount of tax as everyone else. Presumably by then you've got deep roots into your own community and, maybe kids, maybe marriage, you stay there. I just think it's quite a genius idea. Portugal is one of the poorest economies in Western Europe, and the Prime Minister, Luis Montenegro, said the government seeking to tackle the combination of higher taxes, low wages and high housing costs that are driving highly educated young people out of the country. He wants to keep more people in the country. He wants a tax system that is more youth-friendly. What a genius story. It's got tax reform. It's got looking after the young, the kiddies. It's got innovation. I mean, it's still got to get through Parliament, a few little minor issues like that. But I just thought, according to the FT that was writing this story, it is unprecedented. No country has ever put forward something like this. This is serious tax reform. Favourite story, Michael?
That's a good one. That is a good one. And Adam is just
salivating.
Brimming with glee.
So look, my favourite story is probably a little bit more subdued, but it's more for everyone than just for you, Adam, because our love affair with smartphones, right, is getting out of control. And these stats are extraordinary. Nearly 4 million smartphones were sold in Australia in the first half of 2024. That's up 8% from a year ago. And the smartphone analyst Telsight expects that number to hit 8.7 million units for the full year, which is just ridiculous. And as kind of Sean pointed out on the podcast through the week, there are 26 million people in the country, which suggests that 1 in 3 people will be getting a new phone this year. I haven't got a new phone this year. Adam, I suspect you haven't got a new phone this year. Sean, have you got a new phone this year?
No, I do not.
You don't. Exactly. My point is the fact that none of us have. What I am suggesting is that this number has been skewed by a small number of people having vastly more than one phone.
Ooh.
And this would include, obviously, drug dealers having multiple phones in order to keep track of their various deals. It would include love rats.
Oh, love rats. Yes. Yeah. No, that's good.
Multiple relationships going on multiple phones.
They might have 8 or 9.
Indeed. And generally people who have got something to hide. Right? Now a few interesting stats for you. Android phones have accounted for 56% of phone sales this year compared to 44% for Apple. In 2022, the number of active mobile phones, so phones in use worldwide, passed the number of people on the planet, right? So there were more phones than people on the planet in 2022. And then if we go back even further, and this is my favorite part, the first mobile phone call ever was made just over 50 years ago in 1973. And it was made by Motorola engineer Martin Cooper from a street in New York. And you know who he called? He could have called his wife. He could have called his colleagues, his assistant, perhaps.
The president?
He could have called the president. He could have called his parents to say, Mum, Dad, I've done it. No, he didn't. He called Joel Engel at Bell Labs, his chief rival, the person he was racing in order to develop the first mobile phone. It would have to be one of the pettiest things I think I've ever heard. He called up Joel and said, Joel, this is Marty. I'm calling you from a cell phone, a real handheld portable cell phone. And you can just imagine how poor Joel would have reacted. What a way to rub it in. It has got to be one of the most petty things I think I've ever heard.
That is brilliant.
It is good, isn't it?
Yep.
I discovered that while researching. I'm like, it's just a perfect little tidbit from history. There you go. Adam, what do you reckon?
Gee, tax reform, the genius of this proposal in Portugal, and smartphones, and a man called Engel. Michael wins. It has to win for me.
I really thought personal bias would win out there.
What I do find interesting is that mine happened this week and yours happened in 1973, but that's okay.
Yeah. But you know what? The decision's made.
Favorite story of the week. I think it's staggering. 8.7 million phones this year.
Yeah, it's a lot.
In our country, it's unbelievable. And what a massive business this is.
So many love rats. Like it's just...
Adam, 2-2.
So what was the final score?
2-2. I've been a little bit more savage. I've gone a little bit rogue, not entirely on my scoring, so I've been quite harsh at times. Michael, 81 points. Sean, 84 points.
I feel sorry for you, Michael. I'm sorry. I apologise for Adam's behaviour today.
You did it. You started
I apologise.
it. You led him on. Like schoolyard bullies. Today was a travesty. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
And thank you, Adam.
Oh, no, thank you.
Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook and X. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great weekend.